So my background's in HR and business, so that's where I am able to use some of my business skills.
You're who I'm calling if I need a towel on her then.
Yeah. You'll be our mediator. Hello.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, this seemed a little crazy.
Yeah, let's try that again. We need to say it like at the same time or something.
Welcome to K2 Together, more than a knitting podcast. Like that?
You say welcome and I'll say more than a knitting podcast.
Okay. I'm Kenzie.
I'm Kara.
Oh, we're doing it now. Okay. All right. I'm Kenzie.
I'm Kara.
And this is K2 Together podcast.
More than a knitting podcast.
And this is our first ever Knitterview, which is an interview with a knitter we think is very cool.
That she is.
So we asked Emily of Woolly Bear Knits to chat with us, and she is actually local to Minnesota. And Kara and I were chatting about this, and we both followed her very, very early on in our Knitstagrams.
Yes, we did. I think I came across her stuff just when I was researching different local knitters, designers, things like that. And I was instantly drawn to all the bulky hats and things that she designs. So yes, and of course, the added perk that she's local to us. So that's how we discovered her.
Yeah, and she sells her hats at like maker markets and on Etsy, and they're really beautiful. And you'll hear her talk about her aesthetic, but she does very classic designs with a little bit of a special touch. And she has a beautiful Instagram feed. She loves her neutrals. And yeah, she had some really great things to say about boundaries, you know, as a large knitting account. And I thought it was a very interesting conversation that I have a lot to think about for myself.
Yes, same for me. I feel like that was the part of the conversation that I enjoyed the most. So also a really cute description of her business name, which I love.
Oh,
so.
yes. So I hope you all enjoy.
Yes, enjoy. Thanks.
Hello. This is our first interview, which I think we'll be calling Knitterviews, with Emily of Woolly Bear Knits. She is a local Minnesota gal. She has gorgeous hand knits that she sells, and then also occasionally releases really beautiful patterns. So Emily, welcome to K2 Together podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be your guest.
We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and you were probably one of the first accounts both of us followed when we started our Knitstagrams.
Yeah, I think that's true, because I was trying to remember, we were talking about it today and I was like, gosh, I don't even know when I started following Emily. I feel like it's been forever. So
yeah, Kara, I think I found you. I know you're local. I think I found you because someone had posted a sweater made with your yarn, and I think that's how I started following you. And Kenzie,
and you made something out of sea change, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I forgot about that. And Kenzie, we met through, well, I remember seeing your posts when you were in the Knit Collage Knit Along. We made the same sweater.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you didn't add the border, which I think kind of made the sweater a little more refined looking, which was very pretty. And it looked so different with the different yarn.
I ran out of yarn, so that's why I didn't do the border.
Oh, I thought it was a design choice, because it was like, I was like, that's a little different. It's less chunky. It's nice.
That's funny.
Great. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself a little more, what you think people, you know, might like to know about you. And yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Emily. My account is called Woolly Bear Knits, and I have been running this account for 3 years. That's when I started selling my knit hats on Etsy. And yeah, I started because I just really kind of fell in love with knitting in about 2019. I saw an article in Real Simple magazine about We Are Knitters, and it was that they sold kits for, you know, everything you need to knit your own items. So I ended up looking at their website and kind of like went down the rabbit hole watching their tutorials. I had learned how to knit as a kid from my grandma. She taught me how to crochet too, and I'd mostly crocheted up until that point. And my grandma was left-handed, and she taught me everything left-handed. But I'm right.
Wow.
Backwards. So I can never really follow crochet tutorials online. But yeah, I just started knitting and like fell in love with it, made a ton of hats for family and friends. And my sister actually encouraged me to start an Etsy shop because she runs her own super successful Etsy shop. She makes aprons.
Oh, cool.
You should start, it's super easy. And so she was a huge encourager. And yeah, I started my Etsy shop and my knitting account around the same time in January of 2019.
So that's not even that long. Wow. Okay.
So 3 years.
Incredible.
Woolly Bear Knits, the name comes from the caterpillar, the woolly bear caterpillar. They actually have like an antifreeze inside their bodies, so they can like survive the winter. And I used to find them as a kid, and they reminded me of fall, so which is my favorite season. And so I thought it would be a cute name for a knitting company because they're furry, and then you've got like the wool in the name, and like the fact that they never get cold. Kind of, you know, knitting, you're always warm wearing your knit items. So
I know you might need like a woolly bear colorway, you know, hat, because they're like orange and black, right? Which I mean,
Like a rusty.
yeah.
I like that idea.
I think we just had an idea.
So you kind of touched on how you first started selling your knits. So how did you get into designing like patterns and that world?
Yeah, so something that's really important to me is not wasting things at home. Like we just got solar panels on our house. We're trying to reduce plastic waste, which is really hard when you have a kid and you like art projects. But that's something that's really important to our family. So I started writing knitting patterns when I had all these leftover little balls of super bulky yarn. And I was like, what can I do with these? They're not enough to knit a hat. So I one day just randomly started knitting like a Fair Isle cowl using the 3 balls of leftover yarn I had. And that became my first pattern, the Sunrise Cowl, which is a way to use up scraps of super bulky yarn. So that was my first pattern. I posted it. I just had to look it up. It was March 18th of 2019. So it was like 2 months after I started my account.
Wow.
I always used to never follow patterns when I crocheted because I couldn't follow them because my grandma taught me how left-handed. So I couldn't read the diagrams. They were all backwards to me. So I would just kind of make stuff up and it would never turn out. When I started knitting, I'm like, I'm going to learn how to read patterns, and I'm going to follow patterns and not try to do it on my own. So the Sunrise Cowl was kind of reverted back to my own ways of like, I'm just going to figure this out. I took a cowl that I had already and I measured it and I did the math to get the right gauge. And yeah, so that's kind of how I randomly got into knitting patterns. I posted it on Instagram and I was kind of told that same story, and people were like, you should write the pattern. I would make one of those. So I did. And I had no idea what I was really doing other than watching other makers in this community and kind of following what they did. But that was how I got started with pattern writing.
Awesome. So I just kind of have a follow-up question. Did you feel like once you did that, it just a ton of interest came in, like people saw it and they just wanted it, and that's when you really had things grow? Or do you feel like you already had a ton of growth before you released your first pattern?
Yeah, so like growth in terms of my following, is that what you mean?
Yeah, just interest in what you were doing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it definitely snowballed after that. I really got my account growing and kind of my community by doing a lot of test knits for other people. So designers would post a test knit call, and a test knit, if anybody doesn't know what it is when a designer writes a pattern and they want other people to make it also to make sure it makes sense. Do you get the same thing that I made? Is it the right size? What size needles did you have to use? So that's really how I really started growing my account. But from meeting, then when I made my own pattern and had people test it, and then kind of posting about what they made, and then they would post about what I made. And that really helped, get kind of a snowball effect going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I was lucky
curious.
enough that I used Malabrigo Rasta for the cowl, which is definitely my favorite yarn ever. I was lucky enough to have them share my pattern on their account. And that, like, I just remember it was a Saturday. I was at yoga, and I think I had a couple minutes in the car before I went in, and I was like, oh my gosh, they shared my post. It was like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Like, sales. It was like the coolest thing ever. I just felt, I don't know, it was like all this hard work went into this and it paid off. So it was really cool.
That's such a rewarding feeling when things like that happen. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And, I think it's really nice when people come to you to want your patterns, and instead of having to be like, here's this thing I made, people like it, you have a very distinct, like, in my mind, kind of this distinct brand and aesthetic. You have like very beautiful neutrals, mauves, pinks, beautiful, just like soft colors in what you do. And this is a question I like to ask knitters, because I think it's like an insight into how people think about their knitting. Is how would you describe your like knitting aesthetic?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially for people who don't know me. I would say I'm definitely a neutral lover, as you described. So that shows up in the colors that I choose. I have a lot of, and in terms of what I knit with and what I sell, a lot of grays, pinks, bronze. I was doing a lot of like olive green for a while, and like a kind of light blues, or maybe more like an aqua. And it's funny because I go up and look in my closet, and that's all what I wear. Inspired by, like, my brand is very true to me and what I like and what I wear. And I don't think that you have to be like that. You can have a clear brand and not have it be you, right? Like, you could dye super bright yarn and maybe you wear all neutrals, as long as,
I have her fluorescent yarn to prove that.
Yeah.
I'm like strict neutrals in life.
But mine's definitely like inspired by what I wear. And then it also shows up in my knitting of like the hats that I sell are very simple textures, just kind of minimalist. I'm a minimalist. So you can see there's like nothing on my walls. So just like super simple ribbed or like moss stitch, just kind of like knits and purl stitches, because that's what I like. That's what I would wear. And yeah, when it comes to patterns, I think it's kind of simple things with a special touch. So I think my favorite pattern that I've written is my Spindrift beanie, which is actually a faux cable beanie. So it's created with knit twisted stitches instead of a cable knit. So it's super easy to make, but it looks kind of like a classic cable knit hat, and it's super comfortable. So it's like, it has to be practical. It has to be kind of simple, but I want to add some sort of special touch. Like same with my Sunrise cowl and hat. It's a Fair Isle design, but using a variegated yarn makes it look like it's made with a bunch of different colors of yarn, but it's really just 3. So like, that's my special touch on, Fair Isle's been around forever, but that's kind of how I put my own twist on it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I love your patterns every time I see, and your photography is so beautiful. So I love the way that you present your work as well.
You.
Yeah, I think you have an aesthetic that appeals to a lot of people. I mean, it's even me as someone, I'm a maximalist. Obviously. I mean, look at what I'm wearing. But I love your Sunrise cowl. I love your Scandia wall hanging. I love your patterns. They're classic and they're beautiful, but they are special. So I think you have something that a brand aesthetic and a knitting aesthetic that can appeal to a broad range of people, from minimalists to maximalists.
I'm not a minimalist, but I'm definitely not
neutral,
expressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are a low-key neutrals gal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this yellow was a risk today.
we know those moments of when you're like reposted by a bigger account and you're like, amazing. So do you have like a dream collaboration? This was Kara's question, by the way, which I thought was an excellent question. I took it from you, but I thought it was a natural next question.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like other than Malabrigo sharing my post that one time, and they've shared it a couple times, and they've sent me yarn for their new collections a couple times. And I remember it was like 3 months into my knitting account that I got an email from the woman that works at Malabrigo, and she's like, Emily, we found your sunrise cowl and we want to send you some yarn so you can make more of them. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I also remember I was sitting in a coffee shop. I had like an hour to work by myself, and I remember getting the email and be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So that was definitely like a pinch me moment. But in terms of like future collabs, I love knit collage. I know, Kenzie, I was telling you, I was like, I'm so jealous you got to be an affiliate for their upcoming knit along. I do love their yarn, and it's kind of funny because I just talked about how I'm a minimalist, but I do like, especially like their spun cloud, which is like a super bulky yarn, and it's twist. It's kind of, Kara, you can probably tell me what the right word is, but it's woven with like a silvery or gold thread.
It's both.
Yeah, it's like simple because it's just a plain color, but it's got that little special touch of something else. So I would love to like be a test knitter or write a pattern for them or something. So that would be like a dream. In terms of like collaborating on like the knitwear, the sales side, it's taken like 3 years now, but I've been trying to build relationships with some local influencers, like local Minnesota bloggers and other influencers in our community. And I feel like the ball is like finally rolling. I've got some fun people, local people that I'm working with this year. So it's like, I'm manifesting it. It's happening this year, and I'm super excited about it. So there'll be more.
Yeah, are these just knitters or like people in other spheres?
Outside of knitting. And yeah, so like people who would wear my hats on their adventures or around town. So yeah.
Ooh, I love that for you.
It's taken me a while to build, and I think that's the right way to go, like taking time to build the relationships and not just be like, hey, I want to send you something free while you wear it in a picture. So I've tried to like take it slow and be genuine, which is super important to me. So
yeah, I love that. That's so smart. And it's really good for balance, which I think is part of the questions that we have for you, is your work-life balance and how you make all of that work for you, because we know that, what was it that she said? You like to kind of unplug on the weekends if you can. And I have also seen you post about you don't feel this need to churn out patterns all the time. You're not on the choo-choo pattern train. And I was struck by that because I don't feel like I see a lot of like larger accounts, because you have like 20,000 plus followers. I don't see a lot of people talking about feeling like they need boundaries, and we all do. And so I wanted to, we wanted to ask, like, what has kind of informed these values and boundaries and attitudes around social media and how much you produce, for the social medias.
Yeah, it's definitely all related, I would say, and it's taken me about 3 years to get there. But I think the number one thing that informs my boundaries is my son. I have a 5-year-old. He just started kindergarten. So this is like new to me, that I'm home during the day with like time to work on stuff in the quiet by myself. But like not to have him see me on my phone all the time. So I think that's a big part of it. And I see some people that are just like, oh, I'll just set a timer for an hour each day I can spend on Instagram, or 2 hours, or whatever it is. I'm like, if I post that day, I always like, when you post, you're like, you want people to like what you posted, and you're checking it. And like, just because you keep rechecking it doesn't mean more people are going to like it. But not posting on the weekends gives me a sense of peace, because I don't feel like I need to check in on like, did somebody comment on my post, or did somebody share it? So it's taken about 3 years to get there. And in the beginning, my account grew pretty fast. I don't know exactly why. I hope people like what I'm doing, and that they like me being genuine has been really important to me from the beginning, and to just kind of be a nice person. But I did definitely spend way too much time on it in the beginning, but it helped me grow. So I'm like, okay, I'm past that part. Like I've met my goals in terms of growth, which, don't get me wrong, if more people want to follow me, I'm happy to have them in. But I don't feel that pressure anymore. Like, I need to grow, I need to grow, I need to grow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's not sustainable to spend 4 hours a day, liking and commenting on other people's stuff so they comment on yours, and you get sucked into these group chats especially when I was test knitting. I actually just bow out of them now. I tell the designer, like, I'll test knit for you, but I can't be in the group chat. It's just too much. Which is hard because you miss out on meeting new people, and there's always really cool people that you meet through test knitting. But it's just been something I have to be okay with letting go of. And if that's not okay for them, I hope that they will tell me. It's usually I kind of just test for select people now that I know how they write patterns. I know how their process is. The boundaries on, about writing patterns. So one thing for me that's important when I'm writing patterns is not feeling like I need to write patterns all the time. My advice to makers is you don't need to write patterns to be a successful knitting account. I think so many people do, so they do it to get exposure. There's so many other ways to grow your account other than just writing patterns. It's so hard to come up with new ideas that haven't been taken already. I mean, we've been knitting, all of us have been knitting for a while, but generations before us have invented this. And just because we posted about it on Instagram first doesn't mean we invented something. It's, I found myself getting really sucked into like this community of knitters and designers who pretty much just make hats made out of super bulky yarn. And there's only so many things, there's only so many stitch combinations of super bulky yarn you can do. It's, it's one size fits most for hats. So I kind of just took a step back and I was like, I can grow my account and be supportive of other people by testing for other people, by cheering them on, by sharing patterns that they made. And that kind of helped me loosen that feeling of I need to write patterns to be successful, because I don't think you need to. And so now I only write patterns when I feel like I have time. I feel like there's something unique, or I have a unique twist on them, or it fills a need. A lot of my patterns are like scrap yarn ideas. So like I made this cup cozy because I couldn't find a pattern for a cup cozy, and it's a no waste item because I use leftover yarn from hats, and it helps save cardboard because you're not grabbing a sleeve from the coffee shop.
Yeah.
So things like that I feel like fill a need. So if I kind of think of those priorities when I write patterns, it really helped me let go of feeling like I need to churn out a pattern once a month. And I think people also pay it more attention when you do fewer, better things. And that's kind of my motto in life, right? I don't buy a lot of stuff, but when I do, I'll spend more money on a nice pair of jeans than having 5 pairs of jeans that are uncomfortable and don't fit me well. So that kind of motto goes into my business account as well.
Quality over quantity.
Yes.
So then what does like a typical day, I mean, you said now that your son is kindergarten, you're kind of in a transitional phase of having more time. So what does a typical day during maker market season look like for Woolly Bear Knits?
Good question. I actually wanted to make a reel on this, but my schedule and my routine, and I'm a very routine person, so my routine's so totally out of sorts right now. So I'm like, I can't wait till I get into my new routine to show you what it is. So I'm a morning person, and as some of the people that follow me might know, I love my morning coffee walks. So right now I'm getting up at like 6:30 with my son, getting him ready for school. School starts at 7:45. It's super early. So I drop him off at like 6:35, and then I have until 2:00 when I have to go pick him up to work on stuff. So lately I'm just kind of, it's only been a couple weeks, I'm trying to get settled in. But usually I'll go for a walk. I like to make coffee and go for a walk by the lake. I live really close to White Bear Lake, so I get to walk there, which is really nice. Have a nice path to walk on and watch the sunrise. And then I also am really into yoga, so I try to get some sort of yoga workout in. I do like to work out early in the day, otherwise it just doesn't happen.
That's
But yeah, then I work, it's so much time is spent on computer stuff versus knitting. A lot of times now I just kind of knit. I can knit with my sons around and not feel super bad about it. I could just do it while he's playing Lego and stuff like that. But I'll try to do like computer stuff, working on listings for my shop or creating graphics for things, emailing with customers or responding to Etsy messages. Right now it's making pom-poms and hats. I do have a pretty good stock of hats right now ready to go for this season, but I'm pretty much out of pom-poms, so I got to make more of those. But it's running a knitwear business is way less knitting than you think. It's a lot more administrative stuff, and just right now coordinating with the markets that I'm working on. I'm doing a couple collaborations with a couple other local makers, so we've been talking about what do we want to include in our collab and stuff like that. So
It's exciting.
yeah.
I can understand where you're coming from as far as spending less time doing the actual craft and more time doing everything else around it, because I dye yarn, but I spend so much time doing all the other stuff for dyeing yarn, on the computer, managing listings, email communication, social media. There's so much that goes into providing a final product.
Yep. And you take beautiful pictures too. That takes a ton of time.
It does.
Editing the pictures and exporting them and like
Uploading them, cropping them, making sure it's right. Like, yes, you're right.
You will soon have an intern for like labels and lining, and because it sounds like it's just so much, but you can really tell. I can tell in both of your accounts that you spend time on the photography, and it shows in the pictures, and you put so much time and effort into what you make. It's nice to see it represented well, but I can understand that's a lot of work.
She's also offered to come, help me carry water to and from different rooms while I'm dyeing yarn. So
Yes.
that's going to be her glamour job.
Best intern ever. So I was kind of reflecting on how you were talking about, kind of building out your Knitstagram knitting community through test knitting and doing collabs with people. And something I really love about like the Knitstagram is I do think that there's room for everyone to like be successful. And I love that there isn't like a strong sense of competition. Typically it happens, but I love hearing, big makers saying, I love to do test knits, or like, I love to collaborate with people. And this is a question I like to ask as well. Who is inspiring you right now? Is there indie yarn dyers you love? Is there a pattern designer that inspires you, or just someone whose content you just like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm kind of like right now it's October, so I'm right in like the beginning of what I hope to be a busy season of selling stuff. So I'm not like at this point in time, I don't really do test knits unless I try to think of, it's so hard to say no because there's so many people writing beautiful patterns and I want to make all of them. But like, would I sell it? Does it fit in my feed and aesthetic? Those are kind of the two things that I think of if I have time for a test knit. I'm like, I can always go buy the pattern later and support the designer that way and post about it. And that helps them too after like the initial rush of test knitting excitement. In terms of who's inspiring me, and this is kind of weird, but actually over the last year, I've actually unfollowed some people in the knitting community. I felt like kind of just what I said of you want to make everything. And I felt like that was stressing me out of like, I want to make that pattern and I want to make that pattern. And I sort of just had unfollowed some people that if they weren't inspiring me, then I needed to let them go.
Yeah.
And it cleared up space for me to focus on what are my priorities, which is right now is selling my knitwear. And then now it's kind of pattern support because a lot of people more are buying my patterns because people knit more in the fall and winter.
Yeah.
So to focus on that. And I also started following people outside of knitting. And I do have my own personal Instagram account, like just my own personal thing. I've been on it since it came out in 2011 or whatever it was. So I do follow different, more of a variety of like food bloggers and, fashion people and real friends and stuff on that other account. But I started following more like outdoor influencers, local people, like local content creators, people like potters, macrame artists, just because I feel like you get so sucked into like, this is what I should be doing in the Knitstagram community. It felt really refreshing to follow people outside of my art area. I got more ideas for reels. Have I done them yet? No. Like to be inspired and not feel like you're copying somebody because their thing is totally different than yours.
That's a great idea. That's a great take on that.
Yeah, that's kind of been what I've been doing over the last year. In terms of yarn, who's inspiring me? I would say I just really love Knit Collage because I love their patterns. They're just so fun. The yarn is so unique. I'm still deciding if I'm going to do the knit along. I don't think I probably have time right now.
Yeah.
The other person I really like is Goodnight Day.
Yes, I've done 2 of her sweaters.
Me too.
Like the minimalistic knitting patterns. Like, yes, that's me. It's a lot of it's super bulky yarn. I bought one of her like pattern books.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know she had books.
Just beautiful. So I am always really inspired by her. And kind of back to the boundaries thing, I think she also has very clear boundaries, which I do like to follow people that I respect their boundaries. And she's just very passionate about social justice, and I'm aligned with her values. So she's somebody that I also really like to follow. So maybe I should make a Goodnight Day pattern with Knit Collage yarn, and then it'll all come together.
Yes, put it out in the universe. I love that you have this kind of like mindfulness angle to like who you're following, and I'm comfortable sharing like I'm known for knitting reels. That's like literally what I do. And it's really gotten popular. And it's like, I will like any knitting reel I see. I don't care if it's amazing quality or not amazing quality, because I'm like, the world needs more knitting content. But authenticity and being my unique self is also important. And I don't want to be like, there's only so many jokes you can make about knitting, not wanting to weave in your ends. And I've unfollowed some people for other reasons, but like I will often maybe mute some other people sometimes as well, because I'm like, I don't want to like see a real idea, bury it in my subconscious, and then make it later,
That's even hard as a yarn dyer. I'll see really beautiful colors and I'm so inspired by color. I'm like, that's beautiful. Okay, they made that. So I just need to like remove that, or I'll see something that looks just like something I dyed. And then I have to remind myself, we're all working from the same palette of colors. There's only so many colors in the world. And there is such a thing as color theory. So specific colors look better together than others. And we're all going to create some variation of very similar things, and just being comfortable knowing that, but always being sure to have your own brand, your own unique spin on what you're making.
Yeah, it's like unfollowing as a form of self-care is an interesting idea that I think should be normalized, because you can always go back and refollow somebody.
The muting thing is nice too, because if you mute them, then they don't know personally. They might not know. I actually had somebody that I unfollowed DM me and say, I noticed you unfollowed me. Why? And I don't know how she found out, but I didn't really want to say why.
It feels uncomfortable.
So yeah, I think just it's your space, right? You're on Instagram for your own reasons, and if that person isn't making you feel good, they're making you feel bad, and you feel worse as being a part of the community, that's not okay. I think it's okay to cut ties with people that, or actually, I say people because we're all people, right? I think as my account grew a lot, I think people don't always treat you when you have a bigger account like a person. Like, I'm just a normal person. I'm just trying to do my best every day. So I think people lose sight of that when you have a larger account. And I think that's one of the downfalls of growth. But yeah, it's your space. So you should make it what you want to make it.
Yes, curate it to your own satisfaction.
And this is something that it can apply to your account if you have 100 followers or if you have 100,000 followers. You know, so I think this is a good thing for all of us to take away from this conversation and reflect on how do we curate spaces that inspire us and lift us up, but also help us be the best makers we can be. I think that's a really cool perspective. So kind of switching gears, trying to do this naturally.
I was just gonna switch gears too.
Okay, you switch gears and I'll switch to the next gear.
I was just gonna ask this more of a fun question, take it a little bit lighter. I'm gonna ask you, like, what are some of the other fun jobs that you've had maybe before knitting became more primary interest for you?
Yeah, my background is in human resources. So I have 2 business degrees actually.
Business majors.
So I've worked for a couple big companies, some local, one internet giant that you might know. And then I just burned out. We were living in California for a while, and then we had a baby in 2016, and we moved back to Minnesota to be close to our family. And I went back to work after having a baby and just was like, I can't do this anymore. I was dealing with people's problems all day, and the conflict, just as if anyone's an Enneagram fan, I'm an Enneagram 9. So the peacemaker, I'm actually a 9 and a 1, a perfectionist too. So I never know which one comes first, but in terms of like conflict and dealing with conflict every day, I couldn't do it. So we luckily were in a place where I could leave my job, and I've been home with my son for the last 5 years now, and I'll probably start working like a real job eventually. Maybe.
Oh, come on. You have a real job.
You do.
You are a business lady with a successful business. No quotations.
So my background's in HR and business. So that's where I am able to use some of my business skills.
You're who I'm calling if I need a towel on her then.
Yeah. You'll be our mediator. My intern sucks. Can we get her fired?
I'm calling Emily. That's great.
So I know something I love about your account is that you do post about some of your other interests, like you paddleboard all the time. And I got a paddleboard this summer. So it's like, I love the paddleboard content. And I know your husband mountain bikes and has an app, and you posted about the Cuyuna Cove area, our resort, and going up to the Cuyuna Lakes. And I ended up booking the exact same thing because I was like, I was influenced. So you do seem to post like about other interests in your life, but are there other things about you that maybe you don't post on social media, or something people wouldn't know about you that might surprise people?
So yeah, when I posted my stories, it's kind of hard because you want to balance, like you want people to know you're a real person and like relate to you, and that leads to engagement because they're like, oh, I want to go to Cuyuna Cove too. And we can talk about our recommendations of things you need to bring. And so I do, like in my stories, I try to be mindful about what I'm posting, because I don't think people really care about like what I'm eating for dinner. Anything my son does, I have my personal account for that. But I do try to think of like, where do I want, like, I want people to be inspired to like be outdoors and wear my knits. And like, you guys know, because we live in Minnesota, you need to be warm to be able to enjoy outside. So I'm trying to like think of like when I'm doing stuff outdoorsy that I'd love to see my people out in my knits doing. I kind of tend to post more about that in my stories, but I also usually like post about my coffee walks and what podcast or book I'm listening to. So I kind of keep my like stories about that kind of stuff. But outside of that, yes, I love paddleboarding. I've had one for about 5 years now. My husband will say that you never use it anymore, but he hung it really high up in the garage and I can't reach it. It really help every time I need it down. So that's a barrier. Yeah, we love, we have a boat too, so we're like totally water people. So we're, yeah, boating. I love baking, although my time right now is spent knitting, so I'm not baking as much as I used to. And I love to read. I've actually read, I think, 52 books this year. So I'm
Okay. That's a good segue because that was one of my questions for you. I know that you like to read and I love to read. I just haven't had time for it. So I was like, I bet you Emily might have a good suggestion for something great she's read this year.
Yeah, and I've like read too many books that I don't remember them.
It's so hard. Yeah.
I'm currently listening to The Heart's Invisible Furies by, I think it's John Boyne, and it's 21 hours long. I'm listening to it. I'm almost done. Is what I'm listening to. Next up on my queue is, I think it's the Michael Pollan book. I'm a fan of his books about food. This is Your Mind on Plants. I think that's next up for me. And then I usually have a physical book that I'm also reading at the same time. And this summer, I love to read sitting on my front porch and watch the sunset with a glass of wine. So I do in the summer.
Sounds dreamy.
Idyllic.
Yeah.
My reading of a physical book has slowed down because I'm in the busy knitting season.
Yeah. That's natural.
Just joined Book of the Month Club, so it's kind of fun that you get to pick 5 books every month, and then they send you one. So that's fun. So I'm reading one of those right now.
I've almost done that. I'm always tempted, but then I'm afraid that I won't make the time to read them. So that's a nice endorsement that you do it. So I should try it.
And you can skip the month if you.
Oh, perfect.
So that's nice.
Nice. Love that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this has been an awesome conversation, and we wanted to check, with you, Emily, if there was anything you wanted to share with the community or anything exciting you have coming up. I know you're busy at some markets, and are they in the Midwest? What's exciting coming up for you?
So I'll share 2 things. Yes, number 1, I'll be busy with markets. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is Woolly Bear. Woolly has 2 L's. Woolly Bear _knits. I did post recently a schedule of where you can shop. If you don't want to shop my stuff, there's going to be other local makers there too. And then something that I'm doing on the knitting side, if your knitting followers are interested, I'm doing a Pattern of the Month club. And I just sent it out to my email list on October 1st. And I'm going to post about it on October 4th on Instagram. But basically, I'm going to offer one of my knitting patterns per month that will be 50% off. And it's sort of a monthly knit along. So the first one will be my Birchwood Beanie. It's just a plain stockinette stitch hat. It's written for a worsted Aran weight and bulky / chunky, the hand-dyed yarn Kara. Those 76 yard skeins that you never can quite get a full hat out of. So the Birchwood Beanie is 50% off, and you can follow me on Instagram for more details. And then I'm going to encourage people to post about what they knit that month. And then if you do share what you made with the pattern, I'll send you a free coupon, or send you a coupon for a free knitting pattern from my Ravelry store that you can use for something else. So then November will be a different pattern. So it's just kind of like a monthly knit along, but if you don't want to post about it, that's fine. You can still get the pattern for half off. So that should be kind of fun for my knitting community friends.
That's fun. We all love free stuff.
I'm thinking in my head, I want to knit it. I've got some bulky that I haven't dyed, right? I could just dye it up and be ready.
That's be fun. My Pattern of the Month club. And I'm going to run it through January, when it's knitting season, and then just see how it goes. I don't have that many knitting patterns to continue it all year, but it should be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. What a great idea. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Emily, how was your first Knitterview with us? How'd it go?
You're so fun and easy to talk to, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person sometime soon.
We were just talking about that today. We can't wait to meet you in real life at one of our knitting events. So
yes, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for being our first Knitterview and for being our Knitstagram friend. And yes, we look forward to hanging out in person and knitting. And being in community, I guess. That's what
Yes.
you say.
I'll let you two do like the dirt bikes together.
Mountain bikes.
Mountain bikes. Oh, that's what it is.
We can, I don't know. We can paddleboard. We'll
I'll do
paddleboard.
that.
All right. Well, we will end this. We don't have as our first interview, we don't have a sign off yet, but thank you for joining us and have a nice day. Thanks, Emily.
Oh.
Bye.